one at the moment.
Mark, war.
Yes, this is a sampling of the slides I'm using this coming Thursday, April 6th, at a large local restaurant, which is being live streamed, and I'm speaking on the mass media cartel. And I'll give some contact info if I can here in a moment on that, on how to get a pay-per-view on that through a live stream. Anyway, this is a noted cartoon. It's fairly well known. It shows Joseph Pulitzer on the right, known for the Pulitzer Prize, and William Randolph Hearst, or Pulitzer on the left, and William Randolph Hearst, on the right. And this concerns the Spanish-American War in the late 1800s. And they were noted, both of these big names in journalism, for yellow journalism, to constantly put the United States on a war path and to go to war with Spain. They, of course, pushed what many people believe to be a myth, that in Havana Harbor, that the U.S. battleship Maine was actually blown up by a Spanish mine. Many people took issue with that and felt that they had disproved that Spain was not responsible. But facts never meant anything to Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst for their yellow journalism if there were papers to sell. So that's just one of many items I'll be showing this Thursday. We have another one, and actually it goes back in this next slide. It goes all the way back at least until the Civil War in terms of media manipulation and lurching toward war rather than peace and understanding. Horace Greeley, the editor of the New York Tribune, I'll read a little bit here. Greeley's status as the editor of the New York Tribune, which he founded in 1841, that's some 20 years before the Civil War, gave him national influence that even President Lincoln could not afford to ignore. As biographer Robert C. Williams noted, quote, as editor of the influential and widely read New York Tribune in the decades before the Civil War, Greeley's words helped to add fuel to the fires of slavery and sectionalism that divided North and South. End of emphasis. His newspaper had a larger circulation than any other newspaper in the world by 1860, right before that conflict. An eccentric social reformer and erratic political tactician, Greeley pushed Illinois Republicans to back Democratic Senator Stephen Douglas for re-election in 1858. So he ultimately didn't even support Lincoln. But Greeley was also quoted as saying that he wanted to start the attack on Virginia, and he did that through his newspapers before Lincoln ever raised an army. The army wasn't even organized yet, and Greeley was already calling for war against the South, a very noted thing. And so from there, we can go to the next slide. We can talk a little bit about seeing that live stream. This is one of the websites where you can get the pay-per-view, pretty affordable, MixNstream.com. And Richard Gage, the noted 9/11 researcher, is also speaking this Thursday at that restaurant alongside me. And so MixNstream.com is one place that you can check out the live stream availability. And from there, there's we can go on from there. Yes, this is Richard Gage's own website. This is another place where you can get.
And we've lost Mark. Yes, so unfortunately,
to keep our presentations, 9/11 mass media cartel pandemic treaty. So that alludes to my part of it, because I'll also be talking about the pandemic treaty a little bit, which of course I alluded to earlier, talking about Peter McCullough talking to Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Very important, of course, to keep an eye on that treaty in a very close way as they reach for a May 2024 deadline, they say, in Geneva to try and complete that treaty. So that's a couple of websites there, as I mentioned, where you can get live stream access to my talk and Richard Gage's talk this Thursday, based here in Austin. There's ways for U.S. viewers who happen to live closer to buy a ticket to attend in person. Then you get a dinner. Enough said about that. We'll move on to another interesting item here. This from the pages of American Free Press, a very recent edition. In fact, I think it's the most recent, one of the most recent. End War Powers. This is Matt Gaetz, a Republican congressman from Florida, shown on the front page. Populist support for reining in presidents grows in Congress. And one of the things it mentions in this story, I won't get into it in too much depth, is that it's bringing together unlikely bedfellows. Pretty hard left Congress members are joining those on the so-called hard right and trying to rein in presidential powers. And a good example of what's happening would be in the next slide, and we can read a little bit about that. In mid-March, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee deliberated a bill that would repeal the 1991 and 2002 authorizations for the use of military force against Iraq. Senator Rand Paul, the Kentucky Republican, of course, the son of the noted Ron Paul, former congressman, added that he plans to introduce a measure to end the 2001 authorization to use military force, or AUMF, which gave President George W. Bush broad powers to respond to any individual group or nation that officials claim were involved in the 9/11 attacks. Quote, for years, I've led the fight to return war-making powers back to Congress where they belong, said Rand Paul. Over 20 U.S. military actions are justified by claiming the 2001 AUMF authorizes worldwide military force. My amendment, however, would make clear that the current Congress must authorize current war, not a Congress from two decades ago. I beg your pardon. This is a very important thing because when the U.S. lost its ability through the Congress, as spelled out in the Constitution, to actually declare war, and the last time we declared war was World War II, we lost it through the UN action called the Korean War, which ended some 70, 80 years ago as of this year, 1953. When all that happened, something very fundamental changed in the U.S. system. And so this is long overdue. The authorization to use military force has literally become a blank check that belongs to the presidency, not any particular president. So everybody that sits down in the president's chair in the Oval Office automatically has this blank check that stems from Congress's several sessions ago, not the current Congress, as Rand Paul is arguing. And so there's an automatic succession from one president to the next, no matter who's in that chair, for them to automatically have this automatic war powers, a blank check where they can just send the military hither and yon practically at whim. So this is fundamentally important and could lead to restoring something that the U.S. has not had since World War II, ultimately. So there's
Mark,
a lot of gravity here, a lot of importance.
Mark, I just wanted to ask your thoughts on this because it seemed to me that there's a parallel to be drawn here between the use of military force, this authorization for use of military force, and emergency use authorizations for vaccines, in the sense that that the AUMF just allows the continuous use of war by a president in perpetuity, it seems, because of one event. And now we have emergency use authorizations for vaccines, which seem to authorize the use of mRNA technology for just about everything in perpetuity on the basis of one event, in this case, the pandemic. So it seems like governments have a very limited set of sort of mechanisms that they use, and they seem to just reuse them over time and again.
Very adroit observation, Mike. That's exactly right. When I look at people wearing masks, even now to this day, I walked in a doctor's office the other day and they went crazy that I wasn't wearing a mask. And I said, it's mask hysteria, a play on words. And I said it very loudly. But a lot of the people that are wearing masks, I think they're almost conscripted to fight a war against the virus. And they're being a good little soldier when they wear the mask. And so there's that parallel too. Psychologically, it's like the government is conscripting people to fight that war against this pathogen, just as they would conscript people to fight a foreign enemy. A pathogen becomes an enemy is a pathogen. It's all the same. So psychologically and in the way you're describing, I think that's a very insightful thing to point out. And I think there's a lot of accuracy to it.
Okay, so let's move on to Brittany Kaiser then.
Well, nothing real special about her. She's one of many presenters. This is from the Independent National Convention that I'm here in Austin to cover for UK Column. I did notice that it said Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, and I thought you guys might know more about Brittany than I do. She's one of countless speakers here at this program. Bearing with me just a moment, I got some paperwork over here. We, of course, again, have Tulsi Gabbard, the noted former Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii that went independent. She's one of the keynotes, along with former Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich, who's the former mayor of Cleveland, and has done some things toward monetary reform that I think helped get him ushered out of the House of Representatives. Chris Hedges, as mentioned last week, I think it was, noted journalist and author. He'll be speaking on empire and duopoly disentrenchment. And this is just some imagery from the event. There's a lot of people that are not household names. There's Lyndon Johnson right there. I'm going to try and cover him quite a bit because he's going to speak about what kind of infrastructure will alternative media need to become more influential. And regardless of his viewpoint on the news, I'm interested in the infrastructure, the technology to help further disseminate and promote an alternative media narrative to try and push back against this noxious monopolistic narrative that's causing so much harm, from the BBC on your side of the pond to the New York Times and PBS on our side of the pond, on and on and on. So lots to unpack here today, Monday, April 3rd, and the next 2 days after that here in Austin. And I'll have a lot more coming on the website, podcasts and articles, and another report next week, of course. So there you go.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much.